be breathing. George's Marvellous Medicine by Royal Dahl. Chapter 1. Grandma. I'm going shopping in the village, George's mum said to George on Saturday morning. So be a good boy and don't get up to mischief. This was a silly thing to say to a small boy at any time. It immediately made him wonder what sort of mischief he might get up to. And don't forget to give Grandma her medicine at 11 o'clock, the mother said. Then she went, closing the back door behind her. Grandma, who was dozing in her chair by the window, opened her one wicked little eye. And George said, don't forget my medicine. Now, you heard what your mother said, George. Don't forget my medicine. No, Grandma, George said. And just try to behave yourself for once a while. She's away. Yes, Grandma, George said. George was bored to tears. He didn't have a brother or a sister. His father was a farmer at the farm. They lived miles away from anywhere, so he would never any children to play with. He tried of staring at pigs and hens and cows and sheep. He especially tried having to live in the same house at their grizzly old gardens of Grandma. Looking after her all by himself was hardly the most exciting way to spend a Saturday morning. You make me a nice cup of tea for a start, Grandma said to George. That will keep you out of mischief for a few minutes. Yes, Grandma, said George. George couldn't help disliking Grandma. She was a selfish, grumpy old woman. She had pale brown teeth and a small, puckered-up mouth like a dog's bottom. How much sugar in your tea today, Grandma? George asked her. 1 spoon, she said, and no milk. Most grandmothers are lovely, kind, helpful old ladies, but this one, she spent all day and every day sitting in her chair by the window. And she's always complaining, grousing, grouching, grumbling, gripping about something or another. Never once, even on her best days, had a smile at George and said, well, how are you this morning, George? Or, why don't you and I have a game of snakes and ladders? Or, how was school today? She didn't seem to care about other people, only about herself. She was a miserable old grunt. George went into the kitchen and made Grandma a cup of tea with a tea bag. He put 1 spoon of sugar in it and no milk. He stirred the sugar well and carried the cup into the living room. Grandma sipped the tea. It's not sweet enough, she said. Put more sugar in. George took another cup of sugar and he stirred it in again and carried it carefully into Grandma. Where's the saucer? She said. I won't have a cup without a saucer, she said. I won't have a cup without a saucer. George fetched her a saucer. And what about a teaspoon, if you please? I've stirred it for you, Grandma. I stirred it well. I stir my own tea, thank you very much, she said. Fetch me a teaspoon. George fetched her a teaspoon. When her mother and father were home, Grandma never ordered George about like this. It was only when he had him on her own that she began treating him badly. No, said the matter with you. The old woman started staring at George over the rim of the eye, two bright little, wicked little eyes. You're growing too fast, boys. Boys who grow too fast become stupid and lazy. But I can't help it if I'm growing fast, Grandma. George said. Of course you can, she snapped. Growing's a nasty, childish habit. But we have to grow, Grandma. If we didn't grow, we'd never be grown-ups. Rubbish, boy, rubbish, she said. Take a look at me. I'm growing. Certainly not. But did once, Grandma. Only very little, the old woman answered. I gave up growing when I was extremely small, alone with all the other nasty, childish habits, like laziness, disobedience, and greed, and sloppiness, and untidiness, and stupidity. You haven't given up on any of these things, haven't you? I'm still only a little boy, Grandma. You're 8 years old, she snorted. That's enough. That's old enough to know better. If you don't stop growing, soon it will be too late. Too late for what, Grandma? It's ridiculous, she went on. You're nearly as tall as me already, George took a good look at Grandma. She was certainly a very tiny person. Her legs were so short she had to have a footstool to put her feet on. And her head only came halfway up the back of the armchair. Daddy said it's fine for a man to be tall, George said. Don't listen to your daddy, Grandma said. Listen to me. But I do know how to stop growing. But how do I know to stop myself growing? George asked. Eat less chocolates, Grandma said. Does chocolate make you grow? It makes you grow the wrong way. She sat up instead of down. Grandma sipped some more tea, but never took her eyes away from the little boy who stood before her. Never grow up, she said. Always down. Yes, Grandma, and stop eating chocolate. Eat cabbage instead. Cabbage? Oh no, I don't like cabbage, George said. It's not what you like or what you don't like, Grandma snapped. It's good for you that counts. From now on, you must eat cabbage 3 times a day, mountains of cabbage. And if it's got caterpillars in it, so the much better. Ouch, said George. Caterpillars give you brains, the old woman said. Mummy washes them down the sink, George said. Mummy's as stupid as you are, Grandma said. Cabbage doesn't taste of anything. Without a few boiled caterpillars in it. Slugs too. Not slugs, George cried out. I couldn't eat slugs. Whenever I see a live slug on a piece of lettuce, I gobble it up before it crawls away. Delicious, she squeezed her lips together tight so that her mouth became a tiny wrinkled hole. Delicious, she said again. Worms and slugs and beastly bugs. You don't know what's good for you. You're joking, Grandma. Oh, I never joke, said she. Beetles perhaps are the best. Of all, they go crunch. Grandma, that's beastly. Okay. And that's the end of what we have today. Bye.